The new year brings a lot of hopeful news for the world of MMA. With plenty of big fights coming up, there are also a number of UFC legends who are looking to make a comeback in 2023. Today we're going to be talking about the Notorious making good on his promise and entering the octagon after a year-and-a-half-long hiatus. So let's dive right in. First up, UFC Supremo shuts down talk of Michael Chandler vs Conor McGregor. Dana White was livid in the press conference after UFC 282 when asked by a reporter about Michael Chandler being the guy to take on Conor McGregor on his return. Funnily enough, this time his words weren't twisted out of context by a clickbait website, but rather by UFC's trusted broadcast partner ESPN. In a tweet, ESPN producer Charlie Moynihan said that McGregor vs Chandler was most likely to happen, and this is how every other news source ran with it. White denied ever saying something like that. Instead, he recounted how he was asked by someone who he had been looking at a possible opponent if Conor came back right now. He responded by saying that Chandler would be a fun fight. The UFC president went on to say that he doesn't like answering such questions because some effing idiot takes his words out of context and puts them on the internet. While it does look like Dana put Chandler forward against McGregor, his statement was mostly non-committal. It was more like something that he'd want to see and not something that he was planning on putting down on the cards. In the end, we think that if White doesn't say it directly, it's unlikely to happen. It's primarily up to the journalists to not propagate false statements, and we can't really blame the UFC chief for someone twisting his words. Next, let's look back at what happened to McGregor. McGregor last entered the octagon in July of 2021 against his longtime rival Dustin Poirier. This was the latest battle of their trilogy, with both fighters having won once against each other. The fight was going pretty even until McGregor attempted a strike and missed. Throughout the fight, both of these men had been exchanging low kicks to the legs. Poirier was doing better by checking some of them effectively. This probably weakened the Irishman's leg, and when he missed attempting to throw a kick, his bones fractured as soon as he touched the canvas. Due to the severity of these injuries, UFC allowed him to pull out of the USADA testing pool. This allowed McGregor's doctors to try everything to help him to recover as soon as possible. Allegedly, the former dual-weight UFC champion has been taking steroids and other drugs to help him strengthen his bones. As a side effect, he has bulked up significantly, which has attracted a lot of criticism from people for using performance-enhancing drugs. Conor now looks to make his return to the octagon in February 2023, but he hasn't been tested by USADA for a long time. According to the regulations, he has to be in USADA's testing pool for at least 6 months before he can compete. Now we'll have to see if he has to wait for another 6 months, or will the UFC make an exception for their golden boy. Now let's talk about McGregor being criticized by Joe Rogan for his new physique. Rogan is a well-renowned figure in the MMA community and has been with the UFC for the last 2 decades. He also runs the podcast The Joe Rogan Experience, where he invites guests from different backgrounds and talks to them on various topics. In one of his recent podcasts, he invited Derek from More Plates, More Dates, and the duo had an extensive discussion on McGregor's latest physique. The Irishman has been posting photos of himself on his social media, and he looks yoked. He even admitted that he currently weighs more than 260 pounds. On an Instagram live stream, that is why he was the latest topic of discussion for Rogan and his guest. Joe Rogan thinks that McGregor is on a diet of heavy steroids during his recovery, and the mass gain is a direct result of that. He went as far as saying that the Irishman's urine will have enough steroids to melt that USADA cup, which we've got to admit is kind of funny. The 55-year-old podcast host is no stranger to fitness and has been associated with the sport for a long time now. He still manages to keep a healthy lifestyle, and his opinion carries a lot of weight with the community, especially in matters of fitness, so he may be onto something here. Following up, other fighters think the same. When someone tends to talk as much as Conor, people talk back. The same is the case here, as his fellow fighters have been very vocal about his current physique. Paulo Costa posted a screenshot of the USADA website with McGregor's name on it to his official Twitter account. The image was captioned with "Where is my doping program jacket?" and "Secret juice jacket for McGregor." The former middleweight champion implied that USADA might be giving McGregor some unfair leeway. Costa had some issues with USADA in the past, and he has expressed his frustration with them in the past for repeated tests on him, and this isn't the first time either that Costa had made the USADA the subject of his sarcastic tweets. The Irishman's oldest rival and the guy who caused him to break his leg, Dustin Poirier, also mocked him somewhat subtly. The Diamond was recently recovering from a staph infection, and in a Twitter spat, he called out Conor cleverly by asking if he was done shooting Roid House, and if he was ready to get beaten up again. McGregor has been shooting including a remake of the 1989 classic Roadhouse. Poirier's jibe made him go into a rage, calling all sorts of insults and making threats. Classic Conor. Anthony Smith also expressed his displeasure at the USADA for letting McGregor drop out of the pool to do whatever he wants to heal and then let him in the pool again. He compared the Irishman to fighters like Chris Weidman and Anderson Silva, who suffered similar injuries and were never truly able to return at their best. Moving on, who could McGregor fight on his return to the cage? The MMA fandom knows for a fact that any fight with McGregor means a pretty good payday, and as you can guess, fighters are lining up to get it on in the cage with the Notorious. It's pretty much all on Conor what he wants to do. Let's look at some of the UFC stars he can fight on his return. First at number 5, Jorge Masvidal. Seeing the Irishman's physique and his hints of moving up to welterweight, he might opt to go head-to-head with a striker on his return. Masvidal may be one of the names that pop up, as he is unlikely to take the fight to the ground, unlike most welterweights. McGregor must be careful though. Masvidal may have lost all 3 of his last fights, but he can still be a dangerous opponent to go against in the octagon. This bout also carries the possibility of being one of the highest pay-per-view fights in UFC's history. Given the star power of both of these stars, we can only imagine the number of fans signing up to watch the fight. Up next at number 4, Dustin Poirier. In a Twitter spat, Poirier and McGregor exchanged some insults. It was crystal clear to see that there was still a lot of bad blood between the two. The Irishman can make a return and go for a revenge match against his oldest rival. Conor, even after breaking his leg in his last fight with the Diamond, said that, quote, "This is not over." Poirier, on the other hand, doesn't look too interested in another fight with McGregor. He already beat him twice and admits that it'll be pointless for him to fight Conor again, except if it isn't purely for the money, and who says no to a lot of money? Coming up at number 3, Nate Diaz. The rivalry between these two guys is absolutely insane. Currently, they are both even at 1 win apiece, but they'd be looking to take it to the deciding trilogy. Even though Diaz is now a free agent after his UFC contract ended, he might be willing to come back to face McGregor. Keep in mind that these two may take the 3rd installment of their clash outside of the octagon. We can see these guys meet in the boxing ring, as Diaz is already looking to transition toward it, and if nothing else, Nate and Conor might even go for a slap fight in Dana White's all-new Power Slap League. Now at number 2, Rafael Dos Anjos. After his latest victory in UFC Orlando against Brian Barberena, Dos Anjos grabbed the mic and went on to remind the fans of his dominance inside the octagon for years. He said that 7 years ago he defended his title against the Cowboy, Donald Cerrone, and back then champions like Kamaru Usman and Francis Ngannou were on the prelim card. He went on to assert that alone earned him the right to call out anyone. As you can expect, he said McGregor's name and made him remember that they were supposed to fight 7 years ago after he beat Cerrone. Sadly, RDA broke his foot back then and the fight was cancelled, but he's here now, raring to have a go at the Irishman. He even advised McGregor to get clean in a couple of months to rid his body of all the S he's been taking. He seemingly also gave McGregor enough time to get back in the USADA pool, as he challenged him to a fight in July. Finally at number 1, Michael Chandler. Despite White being adamant that he never said this fight was going to happen, we all know he didn't even say it wasn't going to either. Since moving from Bellator to the UFC in 2021, Chandler has gained tons of popularity. He's sitting in the top 5 in the lightweight division and expressed his desire to face the Irishman. This also makes a lot of sense for McGregor. He would have a chance to cement his way once again toward the top of the division and would even have a shot at the title after a couple of wins. This brings us to the end of today's video, my friends. Let us know in the comments what you guys think of Conor McGregor's return and who would you like him to fight. While you're down there, please make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next one.